Welcome to BL Stories, where romance, drama, and unforgettable boys' love come to life. Love knows no limits, and the best stories aren't always straight. Subscribe now and join our growing BL-loving family. She had a heart attack. My dad's voice trembled as he struggled to say the words. She passed away. My heart sank. I stood there in silence, unable to process what I'd just heard. My mind went completely still. Dad looked at me, eyes full of sadness and confusion. Slowly, memories of Mom flooded in. Her smile, our arguments, the time I came out to her, everything. Then, suddenly, the tears came. I couldn't stop them. They poured down my cheeks before I even had time to blink. I covered my face with my hands, not wanting Dad to see me fall apart. I heard him move toward me, but I stepped back, lifting a hand to keep some distance as tears continued to stream down. I don't want to be in here, I whispered, voice shaky, before quickly leaving the house. I knew it wasn't fair to my dad. He had just lost her too. But I couldn't handle being in that house surrounded by so much pain. I ran through street after street, the city blurring past me, every step haunted by thoughts of Mom. Her face wouldn't leave my mind. I didn't know where I was going, I just knew where I needed to be. When I arrived, I rang the doorbell several times, urgently. The door opened, and there stood Alex. His expression shifted from annoyance to immediate concern. "Lucas," he said, startled. "What's going on? Are you okay?" I tried to speak, but all that came out were shaky breaths and more tears. I didn't know where else to go. I finally managed. "My mom, she passed away." Alex's face fell. He stood frozen, clearly unsure what to do at first, then gently reached for my hand and pulled me inside. "Come in," he said softly. As soon as the door shut, he pulled me into a hug. The kind of hug that makes you forget everything for a second. I didn't even bother wiping the tears away, there were too many. He held me tightly, one arm around me and the other gently resting at the back of my neck, his thumb brushing soothing circles. "I'm so sorry," Alex whispered. We stood like that for a while, wrapped in silence and sorrow, until I finally pulled away. He gave me a soft smile and took my hand, leading me to the living room. "Sit down. I'll be right back." I sat on the couch, staring blankly as my thoughts drifted again to Mom. The room was quiet except for the sound of my breathing. Alex returned with tissues and a glass of water. He handed me the tissues and set the water on the table before sitting beside me. I wiped my face and sighed. "I'm sorry for showing up like this. I didn't know where else to go," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Hey, don't apologize," Alex said gently. "You're always welcome here." He paused, then asked awkwardly, Do you want to talk about it?" "She had a heart attack," I replied quietly. That was all I could say. Anything more was too much. "I'm really sorry," Alex said, his voice filled with genuine sympathy. I closed my eyes and pressed my fingers against my temples, trying to push the headache away. "You okay?" he asked, then immediately shook his head. That was a silly question. "Sorry." "Lucas," he said again when I didn't respond. His arms wrapped around me once more, and the tears returned. I let them fall freely as he held me. I took a deep breath and let myself rest in the quiet comfort of his presence. Soon, the heaviness pulled me into sleep. I woke up to Alex gently shaking me. "We fell asleep," he said softly. "It's late, and I think you should probably head home." I nodded groggily and rubbed my tired eyes. "You want me to drive you?" he asked kindly. "Yes, please," I whispered. He walked me to the garage and we got into his car. The ride was quiet, and honestly, I was grateful for the silence. My thoughts wandered, mainly to the fact that I had told Mom I was gay. If I hadn't, I would have regretted it forever. Now, all I could think about was Dad. Should I tell him too? What if something happened to him before I got the chance? I spent the rest of the car ride rehearsing how I'd come out to him, though my thoughts of Mom constantly interrupted. When we arrived outside my house, I hesitated before speaking. "I want to tell my dad," I said, catching Alex's attention. "I want to tell him I'm gay." And also about whatever this is between us. Alex's expression changed slightly. He looked unsure. Lucas, are you sure? I'm his boss and he paused when he saw my face and sighed. It's okay. Just tell him. This isn't about me. He tried to smile, and I returned a small one. I reached for the door handle, but he caught my hand. I sat back as he placed his hand behind my neck and gently pulled me toward him. He pressed a soft kiss on my forehead, easing the weight in my chest, then rested his forehead against mine. You're going to be okay, he whispered. I promise. I gave him a nod and quietly stepped out of the car, heading into the house. Dad was in the kitchen on the phone. The moment he saw me, he ended the call and hurried over to pull me into a hug. Are you all right? He asked after a moment. Not really, I replied honestly. Where did you go? I just needed a walk, I said quietly, my thoughts racing. Dad, I began, nervously rubbing my hands together. This may be the worst time to say this, but I feel like I need to. I told Mom before she passed, and I'm so thankful I did. He looked at me, concerned. What is it? I took a deep breath and met his eyes. I'm gay. For a moment he just looked at me. Then he nodded slowly, a gentle smile forming on his face. I'm okay with that. It's who you are. Thank you for telling me. The relief hit me like a wave. I smiled, feeling tears well up again, but this time, from comfort, not grief. That's not what you were expecting, was it? Dad chuckled lightly, though the sadness in his eyes was still there. I thought you'd be mad, I admitted. He pulled me into another hug. Never. I thought about telling him about Alex, but now wasn't the time. Still, I had done something important. I had come out to my dad, and he accepted me. That meant everything. I was on my way to work the next morning, even though my dad had asked me to take the day off after everything that happened with Mom. But sitting at home and crying alone wasn't going to help. I needed to keep moving, to pretend things were still normal, even if nothing felt that way. Maybe pretending would make it easier. Dad left me a note before heading to work. It said he wanted to talk tonight, probably about Mom, or about me coming out. Maybe both. When I arrived at the restaurant and headed to the back, my boss gave me a surprised look. You're not supposed to be here, she said, raising an eyebrow. It's my shift today, isn't it? I asked, though I had a feeling I knew why she looked confused. I got a call from your dad. He said you wouldn't be coming in today, said you lost someone in the family, she explained, folding her arms. I lowered my eyes and sighed. I'd rather be here than at home alone with my thoughts. She hesitated, then gave me a small nod. If that's the case, just try to keep your focus. I will, I assured her. So, I got to work. I tried to act like it was just another day, keeping busy and staying calm. About 4 hours into my shift, the front door opened and in walked Alex, accompanied by a woman with glowing brown skin and a beautiful afro bun tied neatly on top of her head. She looked like someone important, maybe a business associate. I froze for a second as I watched them get seated by one of the waitresses. Alex hadn't seen me yet, and he likely didn't expect to see me here today. Still, he knew I worked here, so maybe he was curious about the place. I'll take their table, I told the waitress who seated them, nodding toward Alex's booth. When they looked ready, I made my way over. What can I get you two today? I asked, trying to sound cheerful. Alex's eyes shot up at the sound of my voice, surprised. Lucas? I thought you were taking the day off, he said, clearly concerned. I gave a small shrug and smiled politely. What can I get you? The woman gave her order right away. Alex took a little longer, watching me closely, but he eventually placed his order too. I brought their drinks, and later their meals. The woman thanked me with a warm smile. Alex, on the other hand, flashed a cheeky grin when she wasn't looking. Even after an hour, they were still there, talking and sipping champagne like the elegant pair they were. As I continued working, Alex and I exchanged occasional glances. Every look we shared added a strange comfort to my day. But something soon caught my attention at one of the booths nearby. A man sat with a woman, and I noticed his hand gripping the back of her neck. At first, I wasn't sure if they were joking around, but the look on her face said otherwise. His jaw was clenched, his face red with anger, and he was speaking harshly, too close to her face. It didn't feel right. I approached them cautiously. "Is everything okay here?" I asked gently. The man turned to me, clearly irritated. "Mind your own business," he snapped. I ignored the tone and glanced at the woman. Her eyes pleaded silently for help. "Sir, I think it would be best if you let go of her," I said calmly. "I haven't done anything wrong," he muttered. "Leave us alone. I'm a staff member, and I need to make sure our guests are safe. If you don't let go, I'll have to ask you to leave," I said professionally. The man's expression darkened. "You think you can tell me what to do?" he muttered, then stood up, stepping uncomfortably close. People were beginning to notice. The room grew quieter. "Where's your manager?" he demanded. I stayed calm. "She's around. I'm sure you can find her if you look." His face twisted in frustration. "You trying to be clever?" he said, stepping even closer. Then, in one quick movement, he pushed me backward into the edge of the booth. I stumbled slightly but kept my balance. That's when he grabbed a plate from the table and smashed it on the surface, reaching for a sharp shard. The restaurant fell into total silence. He lifted the shard toward my neck, his other hand pressing lightly against my collar. Not enough to hurt me, but enough to freeze me in place. The woman he had been sitting with recoiled in fear, shrinking back into the booth. I glanced around. Every customer was staring now. Then I saw Alex. He had stood up from his table, frozen with shock. The man looked down at my name tag. "Lucas," he muttered. "I'll remember that." His grip tightened for just a moment, long enough for panic to rise in my chest. I closed my eyes, bracing myself for the worst, but before anything happened, the weight pressing against me was suddenly gone. I stumbled to the side, gasping as I heard a heavy thud hit the ground. I tried to steady my breathing, struggling to make sense of what just happened. Slowly, I opened my eyes, and what I saw left me stunned. A stranger had tackled the man to the floor, holding him down firmly. Around us, I could hear the murmurs of other customers, most likely backing away in shock and confusion. As I tried to stand, a familiar hand reached out to help me. I looked up and saw Alex, his eyes wide with concern. I gripped his blazer for support, my hands still shaking. His expression didn't change. His worry for me was written all over his face. "I'm calling the police," said someone nearby, already reaching for their phone. My eyes drifted to the man who had attacked me. He was now being restrained by two people, still struggling and shouting, but held firmly to the ground. While we waited for the police to arrive, staff walked around the restaurant, trying to calm guests and reassure them everything was under control. This definitely wasn't going to help our Yelp reviews. My boss finally appeared, having missed the chaos. She walked up to me and gestured toward the back. "Come with me," she said, her tone clipped. I glanced at Alex. He gave me a soft nod and a reassuring smile. I followed my boss into her office, where she motioned for me to sit. "What on earth just happened?" she asked, clearly frustrated. I took a deep breath and quickly explained. The man was being aggressive with the woman he was with, so I asked if everything was okay. He got upset, and before I knew it, he grabbed me and, well, it got physical. He even grabbed a piece of a broken plate. My voice shook as I spoke. She raised a brow. "You must have said something that provoked him. What exactly did you say?" "I really didn't say much," I answered truthfully. "He insulted me." I might have smiled because I didn't want him to think he got to me. She let out a sigh, her jaw tensing slightly. "You understand I'll have to issue you a formal warning," she said. I blinked in confusion. "Wait, what? What did I do wrong?" "You may not have started it, but engaging with someone like that, even with just a look, can escalate things. I know it's not fair, but we have to follow policy. This is your first warning. After this, well, you know." Before I could respond, a staff member poked her head in. "Sorry to interrupt, but the police are here. They want to speak with you both." "Send them in," my boss replied. The officers entered and asked us both for statements. I explained everything clearly. Since my boss hadn't witnessed the incident, she didn't have much to contribute. Eventually, the man was escorted out in handcuffs. The woman he had been with left too, accompanied by another officer. Before she went, she asked one of the kitchen staff, Danny, to tell me thank you. Afterwards, I went to find the man who had stepped in and helped me. I thanked him more times than I could count. I don't know what might have happened if he hadn't intervened. Eventually, my shift came to an end. I was still a bit shaken, but I managed to finish the evening. Alex gave me a ride home after wrapping up his meeting. Honestly, though, this whole week had been one disaster after another. First month of others. It felt like everything was spiraling. As Alex drove, he suddenly turned down a road I didn't recognize. I frowned. Alex? Where are we going? You're not about to kidnap me, are you? He laughed softly. No. I just want to take you somewhere. I gave him a curious look but didn't argue. Eventually, he parked the car in the middle of a quiet, dark area. He climbed out and opened the door for me like a gentleman. I stepped out and followed him as we walked along a gravel path, the trees around us twinkling with tiny fairy lights. The farther we went, the more peaceful it became. We stopped at a beautiful fountain surrounded by more glowing lights draped from the branches overhead. It was breathtaking. The soft sound of the water trickling down made the space feel almost magical. What is this place? I asked, a soft smile forming on my face as I looked around in awe. It's kind of a secret, Alex said, his voice low and gentle. Not many people know about it. Those who do take really good care of it. I turned to him, still smiling. It's beautiful. Lucas, he said, pulling my attention back to him. I know the last few days have been incredibly hard, and I don't know if what I'm about to say will help at all, but I'd like to try. My heart began to race. I nodded, encouraging him to go on. Alex gently reached for my hands and held them. Will you do me the honor of being my boyfriend? My eyes widened slightly. Did he really just ask me that? I didn't know what to say. I wanted to be with him, but there were so many complications that came with it. But what about Emily? And everything else that's going on? Wouldn't this just make things more complicated? I stammered, nervous. I wasn't trying to make excuses, but I worried it might sound that way. Alex kept holding my hands, his eyes calm and steady. I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, he said gently, his thumbs brushing over my knuckles. He looked into my eyes, patiently waiting for an answer. I smiled slowly, and it grew into a grin. Alex, of course I'll be your boyfriend. It might feel a little sudden, we've only known each other for a few weeks, but something about this feels right. Different. He lit up with a joy I didn't know I was capable of giving someone. It made my heart flutter. Honestly, being with Alex might be exactly what I need right now. He grinned widely, and I pulled him into a hug, smiling as I held him close. When he pulled back, he leaned in and gave me a quick, gentle kiss. I could feel the care in it, soft and reassuring. A few seconds later, my phone vibrated in my pocket. I sighed as I pulled it out, struggling to read the message through my cracked screen. Dad, when you get home, get changed quickly. We'll head out. I typed a quick reply. Okay. When I looked up, Alex was peeking down at my screen. My dad wants to talk, I said. Not sure what about. Maybe something about mom, or maybe about me being gay. Oh, you told him? Alex asked, raising his eyebrows. I nodded. Yeah. He took it really well, actually. Just said it's part of who I am. Alex smiled, but there was a flicker of hesitation. I don't think I'd have the courage to tell my dad. Not face to face, anyway. Why not? I asked, frowning slightly. He looked down for a moment and sighed. One of my brothers, Ollie, came out to him. Later, I overheard my dad talking to my mom about it. He said he was glad Ollie wasn't taking over the company because he thought being gay would damage the company's image. That's really unfair, I said quietly, my heart sinking a little for him. Anyway, I should get going, I said. And I should drive you, Alex added with a playful smile. We pulled up in front of my house, and I gave Alex a quick goodbye kiss before heading inside. I greeted Dad and ran upstairs to change into skinny jeans and a simple t-shirt. I grabbed a jacket, jogged back down, and we headed out. While Dad drove, I messaged Amy a long update, spilling everything that had happened. We stopped in front of a familiar cafe, one my mom used to take me to when I was younger. Dad turned and gave me a gentle smile. I sighed quietly and followed him inside. I wasn't sure what I was supposed to be doing right now. I hadn't cried like I thought I should. I hadn't helped plan the funeral, though her boyfriend was handling that part anyway. And now I was dating Alex, as if life was just carrying on. Maybe it just hadn't hit me yet. We sat in a booth, and a waitress came to take our order. After she left, there was a brief silence before Dad spoke. "How are you holding up? You haven't really talked to me about your mom." "I don't know," I admitted. "It doesn't feel real yet. Like she's not really gone. So, I'm not reacting the way I thought I would." Dad nodded. "It'll hit you eventually. And when it does, I'm here." Our food arrived, and we began eating. Then Dad asked, "How old were you when you came out to your mom?" 15, I answered, feeling a bit guilty. "She told Richard and I don't think he liked it. That's probably why I don't get along with him." "Is Richard?" Dad's brows furrowed. "Is he homophobic?" I shrugged. "I don't know for sure. He just seems to have something against me." Dad nodded but didn't press further. It felt like a good time to bring up Alex. We were already talking openly, so maybe it was best to tell him now. Before I could say anything, Dad beat me to it. "So, do you have a boyfriend?" he asked, a teasing grin on his face. "Actually, that's what I wanted to talk to you about," I said seriously. His grin faded. "But what's up?" he asked, now more curious. "Well, he just became my boyfriend today. But we've been getting close for a few weeks." "Who is it?" Dad asked, a hint of concern in his voice. I bit my lip. This was almost as nerve-wracking as coming out. "Alex. Alex Woods." Dad blinked. "As in?" "As in your boss," I said awkwardly. He stared at me, trying to process the information. "My boss is your boyfriend?" I nodded slowly. "How did you even meet him?" "I thought he had a girlfriend not long ago." "Well, I accidentally spilled hot chocolate on him. That's how we met. And yeah, there's some unresolved stuff with his ex, but they're not together anymore." Dad shook his head, still trying to make sense of it all. "I'm sorry if this makes work awkward," I said quietly. He looked at me and sighed. "No, don't worry about that. You can't help who you connect with. I'll get used to it. Honestly, I just didn't realize he was into guys. But then again, it's not something I ever really thought about." I let out a small laugh, and we ended up talking about everything: memories, feelings, and where to go from here. Later that night, after we returned home, I texted Alex until I got too tired to keep my eyes open. I forgot to mention that my dad now knew about us. Right before falling asleep, I sent one last message. "Good night, Alex." A few days had passed, and I hadn't seen much of Alex. He'd been swamped with work. As for me, I mostly stayed home watching TV or occasionally went out with some friends. Alex texted me saying he felt bad for not spending time together lately. He wanted to make it up to me and told me to dress nicely after work. He'd pick me up at 8 p.m. So, there I was, in a taxi heading home after work, glancing out the window while making a mental note. I really need to get my driver's license and a car soon. By the time I got home, it was already 7:45. I quickly got ready, making sure I looked presentable despite the rush. Dad wasn't home yet. He had left a note saying he wouldn't be back until late. I scribbled a reply underneath his message: "Might be back late too. Going out with Alex. See you tonight." Sure, a text would have worked, but there's something charming about leaving little handwritten notes. I styled my hair, gave myself one last glance in the mirror, and sat down to catch a few minutes of TV. That's when my phone buzzed. Alex was outside. I grabbed my things and left the house, a wide smile spreading across my face as I climbed into his car. His smile matched mine. "You all right?" he asked. I nodded. "Yeah, I'm good." We drove for about 20 minutes before pulling into the parking lot of a fancy, upscale restaurant. The sky was already dark, which somehow made everything feel more romantic. The streets were full of people, and I was a little surprised to see the restaurant entrance right off the sidewalk. As we stepped out of the car and made our way through the crowd, I looked around, a little overwhelmed. "This looks really romantic. Are you sure you want to bring me here?" I teased, nudging him with a grin. Alex shrugged and smiled, guiding us inside. We were shown to our table, and I couldn't help but notice a few curious glances from other diners. Maybe they were wondering what two guys were doing on a dinner date in such a dreamy place. I felt a little self-conscious, but Alex didn't seem fazed. Once seated, we looked over the menu and placed our orders. "Oh, and by the way," Alex said, setting down his water glass, "I found out that the guy who attacked you at work is awaiting trial. He's definitely in trouble now." I nodded. "But I just hope he doesn't come back and finish what he started," I said, trying to keep my tone light, even though the memory still sent a chill down my spine. We talked for a while until our food arrived, and we started eating. "I think I should stop taking you to just restaurants and cafes," Alex said mid-bite. "We need to go somewhere different." I raised an eyebrow, smiling. "Like where?" "I don't know, maybe a beach? Grab some sushi? Do something romantic like couples do in the movies." "That actually sounds like a pretty good plan," I replied. We were finishing up our meals when Alex brought something up again. "Your dad was all smiles with me today at work?" he said, a smirk creeping onto his face. I laughed. "Yeah, he probably was." My phone suddenly buzzed in my pocket. Several times. I winced. "Sorry," I muttered, pulling it out to check. I had a few messages from my half-sister, Riley. She was only 15. "Riley, what's your address again? I'm alone doing Mum's funeral invitations while Dad's at work and I forgot." "Riley, hello?" I stared at my screen, feeling a lump rise in my throat. She's only 15 and handling all of this on her own. I don't even know how she has the strength to be organizing funeral invitations. Maybe she's coping the way I am, by just going through the motions. Me? Okay, first of all, I'm really sorry I haven't been in touch. I'm handling this in a strange way, I guess. I'll come see you soon. Sending my address in a separate message. I sent her my address. She replied with a thank you, followed by those familiar 3 dots that let me know she was still typing. "Riley, it's okay. The others are crying and letting it out, but I just feel awful and don't know how I'm even functioning. Dad's been acting strange lately. He gets angry over little things. I get it, but it still hurts. School's been tough too." "Me? What's school been like?" "Riley, teachers keep asking if I'm okay, but I just can't deal with it. I'm falling behind, and I honestly don't know what to do." "You're lucky you're not in school anymore. At least you can stay home if you need to cry." "Me, I have a job now, but maybe you should take a couple of days off. It's okay to take time to grieve, but don't stay in bed all day. Try going out. It might help." "Riley, no, it doesn't. Is that what you're doing? Pretending everything's fine? That's not good either. That's bottling everything up. I gotta go, I still have a lot of these to do." I stared down at my phone, not sure what to say next. I slipped it into my pocket and looked up at Alex. He must have been sitting there quietly for a while. "Sir, it was my sister," I said quietly. "About my mom's funeral." Alex's expression shifted with concern. "Are you okay?" I was about to say yes, but I couldn't. I looked at him, and for a second I tried to hold it in. But the tears welled up anyway. "No," I said softly, my voice cracking. "I'm not." I covered my face with my hands, trying to hide the tears, even though he had already seen me cry before. "We can go if you want. I'll take you home or back to mine," Alex offered gently, concern clear in his eyes. I shook my head. No, it's okay. I'll be fine in a minute. I just need to step outside, all right? Just 5 minutes." I stood up, but Alex reached out and gently took my hand. "What for?" he asked softly, still holding on, worry etched across his face. I met his eyes and sighed. "Just need some air." His expression didn't ease, but he gave a small nod. I left my phone on the table with him and stepped out into the evening air. The city was buzzing, but I moved off to the side, stopping at the mouth of a narrow alleyway nearby to avoid the crowd. I wiped the tears from my cheeks and pulled out a cigarette. It had been years since I smoked, but I had started carrying them again just in case. I lit one and took a breath, coughing quietly as my lungs reminded me why I'd quit in the first place. As I stood there, trying to calm my racing thoughts, A man in a dark hoodie entered the alley. He didn't just glance at me, he was heading straight for me. "You Lucas?" he asked, his voice sharp and angry. I froze, my heart pounding. "Why?" I asked, trying to stay calm. He didn't answer, just muttered, "Thought so," through clenched teeth before grabbing me by the collar. I gasped as he yanked me further into the alley, my cigarette falling from my hand. Suddenly, it was dark. The man shoved me against the cold brick wall. My head thudded against it, dazing me. He held me there with one hand while reaching into his pocket with the other. I couldn't even process what was happening before something sharp struck my side. My breath left me all at once. Pain flared through my body, and I instinctively clutched at him, but he backed away. I slid down the wall, my legs no longer able to hold me. "You messed with the wrong people," he spat before turning and disappearing into the night. I sat there, stunned, as pain spread across my middle. I looked down. My shirt and jeans were stained dark. A trembling hand reached toward the wound, but I didn't dare touch it. Tears welled in my eyes. I tried to cry out, but the words wouldn't come. My throat was dried tight. I didn't have my phone. I was alone. The world spun around me. My breathing was shallow. I felt myself fading. I don't know how long I sat there, slumped against the wall, but then I heard a voice. "Lucas? Are you around here?" Alex's voice rang out, echoing into the alley. I gasped, trying to respond. "Alex." I managed to croak, but it was barely audible. He didn't hear me. I took another breath, the pain stabbing at me. "Alex." I called again, louder this time. His footsteps approached quickly, and then I saw him round the corner. "Lucas," he cried, dropping to his knees beside me. His face went pale. "What happened?" His voice cracked as tears welled in his eyes. I tried to speak, but my throat wouldn't cooperate. I just moved my lips, mouthing words that didn't come out. Alex placed his hands gently but firmly over the wound, trying to stop the bleeding. "Stay with me, okay? Stay with me," he whispered, voice trembling. His eyes searched mine desperately. My vision blurred, and I felt myself slipping again. But then I felt his hand on my cheek, grounding me. He looked at me, terrified but focused. His other arm wrapped around me, lifting me carefully. That was the last thing I felt before everything went dark. Alex's POV. I watched Lucas leave the restaurant with a clearly upset expression. Even so, I continued eating for a few more minutes, though I couldn't stop thinking about him. As I finished my meal and leaned back in my seat with a sigh, I realized I had made a mistake. I shouldn't have let him go off on his own like that, especially not while he was so emotional. Quickly, I stood up and left some money on the table, not wanting the staff to think I was leaving without paying. Lucas had been gone for at least 5 or 10 minutes by now. I stepped outside and looked around. I started with the parking lot, but he wasn't there. Then I returned to the front entrance and noticed an alleyway along the side of the building. I walked toward it, hoping I'd find him. I looked down the alley, but still no sign of him, just a half-smoked cigarette burning on the ground. It could have been his. "Lucas? Are you around here?" I called out, cautiously stepping further in. I heard a faint voice from around the corner. I couldn't make out the words, but something about it felt familiar. I kept walking, my steps slow and careful, until I heard it again, my name, this time a little louder and raspy. "Lucas!" I called out again, my heart pounding. I turned the corner and froze. "Lucas!" I gasped, rushing to his side and dropping to my knees. He was on the ground, blood soaking through his shirt and jeans, a knife lodged in his stomach. My heart dropped, my breath caught in my throat, and tears stung my eyes. What happened?" I whispered, panic setting in. He tried to speak, but no sound came out. I could see the pain in his eyes. I took a shaky breath and pressed my hands over the wound, trying to slow the bleeding. "Lucas, I don't know what to do. No one can hear me from here," I said, my voice trembling. He didn't respond. His gaze was locked downward, his eyelids growing heavier with every passing second. Tears streamed freely down my face. I moved one hand from his stomach and gently placed it on his cheek, trying to keep him awake. "Lucas, I'm going to lift you up, okay?" I need to get help, I said softly, though his eyes were starting to lose focus. I carefully wrapped his arm around my shoulders, doing my best to avoid disturbing the knife as I lifted him. I carried him back toward the alley's entrance, but his body grew heavier, and suddenly, he slumped against me completely. No, no, please stay with me, I whispered, struggling to hold him up. I made it closer to the street, where I finally spotted a crowd passing by. Hey! I shouted desperately. A few people turned to look. Their eyes widened when they saw us. Can someone help me, please? I cried out. One man quickly ran over and helped support Lucas. Together, we carried him out to the main street. A woman from the group pulled out her phone. I'll call an ambulance, she said, concern filling her voice. We laid Lucas down on the ground. I sat behind him and cradled his head in my lap. The man knelt in front of us. I need something to press on the wound, he said urgently. Without hesitation, I took off my jacket and handed it to him. He folded it quickly and pressed it gently over the injury, avoiding the knife as best he could. I looked down at Lucas, his eyes closed as he rested in my arms. My heart pounded in my chest, and though I tried to stay calm, tears continued to fall. A crowd gathered. Voices rose around us, gasps, questions, worried murmurs. But all I could focus on was Lucas, still breathing. Minutes felt like hours until the ambulance finally arrived. Paramedics and police rushed onto the scene, pushing the crowd back. Please step back, one of the paramedics said as they took over. I moved away slowly, but my eyes never left Lucas. I couldn't stop staring at the knife. Is he going to be okay? I asked through unsteady breaths. My hands were on my head, fingers tangled in my hair. We're going to do everything we can, the paramedic replied gently. Who are you to him? I looked around at the crowd, realizing they could all hear me. But I didn't care anymore. All that mattered was Lucas. I'm his boyfriend, I said, my voice quiet but steady. All right, are you riding with us in the ambulance? He asked. I nodded quickly and followed them as they carefully loaded Lucas in. What's his name? The paramedic asked. Lucas, I said, climbing into the back with him. The ride felt endless, but eventually, we arrived at the hospital. Doctors and paramedics moved quickly, rushing Lucas inside. I followed until they stopped me. You're Lucas' boyfriend? One of the doctors asked. Yes, I nodded, trying to catch my breath. Does he have any family we can contact? He asked. I pulled out my phone and gave him Mike's number, Lucas' dad. The doctor nodded and left. I sank into a chair in the waiting area and dropped my head into my hands. My tears returned, this time out of sheer frustration. I gripped my hair, silently blaming myself. I should have followed him. I should have been there. But now all I could do was wait and hope. I was pulled out of my thoughts when the same doctor from earlier approached me. I haven't been able to reach Lucas' father. Is there anyone else I can contact? She asked gently. I thought for a moment but didn't have anyone else's number. You could try his dad's work number, I said quietly, not really in the mood to talk. I pulled out my phone and gave her Mike's work contact. She nodded and walked away, leaving me alone again. I rested my head in my hands. After about 10 minutes of silence, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't answer. Whatever it was, it could wait. Soon, a different doctor approached, offering me a kind smile. There's a police officer who would like to ask you a few questions. Would you like me to tell him to wait? I sighed, rubbing my eyes. No, it's okay. Just bring him here. The officer asked me standard questions. Where I was during the incident, how I found Lucas. I didn't have much to say, so the conversation was brief. After he left, I leaned forward, resting my head in my arms. I must have drifted off, because I was woken later by a doctor. Groggy and confused, I momentarily forgot where I was, until it all came rushing back. Are you here for Lucas? She asked softly. I quickly stood and nodded. Is he okay? He's stable but still unconscious. You can see him now if you'd like. I nodded again and followed her down the hall. As I entered Lucas' room, my heart sank. He lay there, pale, unconscious, hooked up to machines, an oxygen mask covering his face. The doctor left us alone. I quietly took a seat beside his bed. Swallowing back tears, I gently took Lucas' hand in mine. He didn't respond, of course. The absence of that familiar squeeze made my chest tighten. With my other hand, I pulled out my phone, remembering the earlier call. A voicemail waited for me. I played it. "Mr. Woods, it's Mike." The message began, his voice trembling. "I couldn't reach your work phone, so I tried this one. You didn't pick up? Anyway, I had to leave work. My son's he's been hurt. I'll make up the hours. I need to get to the hospital right away. I'm sorry." His voice was filled with fear and guilt. I ended the voicemail and tucked my phone away. Then I sat there in silence, holding Lucas' hand, watching his chest rise and fall, hoping, desperately, that he'd open his eyes. But he didn't. That's when Mike walked in. I froze. My eyes widened, and I instinctively pulled my hand away from Lucas. Mike noticed, a flicker of hurt crossing his face before he replaced it with a calm expression. My mind scrambled for an explanation. Why I was here. How I got here. What I should say. "You don't have to explain," Mike said quietly, stepping into the room. "I know about you too." I blinked. "No." He nodded. "Lucas told me." He sat on the other side of the bed, looking down at his son with a sadness that filled the room. His eyes were glassy, but no tears fell. "What happened?" he asked softly. "Were you with him?" "Yeah, we were at a restaurant." He got upset about his mom and stepped outside. I didn't follow him right away. I thought he just needed a minute, but then I found him. Mike was silent, processing my words. He nodded slowly. "He must have been so scared," he murmured, almost to himself. I looked at Lucas, peaceful in his sleep. "I would have come sooner," Mike added, wiping at his eyes. "But traffic was awful." "It's okay," I reassured him. "He only just came out of surgery." Mike nodded, then sighed. "I should let Amy know." "Amy?" I asked. "Lucas' best friend. She deserves to know." He stepped aside, dialing a number. I could hear a voice on the other end. "Hi, it's Mike, Lucas' dad. Is Amy there?" After a brief pause, he continued. "Hi Amy, it's me. I'm really sorry to tell you this over the phone, but Lucas has been hurt. He's stable now and in the hospital, but I thought you should know." There was a pause, then Mike responded. "Yeah, of course. The sooner, the better." He hung up and returned to his chair. About half an hour passed as Mike and I quietly shared memories of Lucas, his goofy moments, his resilience, the things he loved. Mike said he was proud of him and happy for him. That warm moment was interrupted by a knock at the door. Amy stepped in, looking nervous and shaken. I recognized her. I'd once given her a ride home with Lucas. She seemed sweet. I liked her. Mike stood and gave her a comforting hug. After they pulled apart, Amy walked over to the bed while Mike returned to his seat. "Can I sit on the bed?" she asked softly. Mike nodded, and she gently sat down near Lucas' feet. Then she looked at me. "Why are you here?" she asked, then shook her head. "Actually, never mind. I forgot. You're the one he's seeing, right?" I nodded, and she gave me a faint smile. "You should have seen how happy he was when he told me," she said, her voice full of affection. "Even with everything going on, he was really happy." She turned her head to Lucas, her eyes welling up with tears. A soft smile crossed her face as they spilled down her cheeks. Covering her face with her hands, she let out a quiet sigh. We sat around Lucas' hospital bed for another hour. I held his hand gently, my head resting on the mattress. Amy sat near his feet, and Mike was next to him, softly brushing Lucas' hair with comforting strokes. The room had been silent for several minutes, still and heavy, until I suddenly felt Lucas' fingers move against my palm. I gasped, sitting up quickly. Amy and Mike looked at me with concern. I think he's waking up," I whispered, my eyes locked on Lucas' face. His eyelids fluttered, and I could see the movement beneath them. He squeezed my hand. "Lucas? Are you awake?" "It's Alex," I said gently. We watched as his eyes slowly opened, though only slightly. They looked tired and dazed. He scanned the room, confusion written on his face. His gaze met mine for a moment, silent and searching, before drifting to Amy and Mike. His frown deepened, and suddenly he began breathing rapidly. Alarmed, he reached up toward the oxygen mask on his face, trying to pull it off. "Take it off, please," Lucas said breathlessly, his voice strained with panic. I gently held his hands, trying to calm him, while Mike carefully removed the mask. "It's okay, son," Mike reassured him. "The mask is just there to help you breathe." "Should I get someone?" Amy asked, eyes wide. Mike nodded immediately. Amy rushed out and returned moments later with a nurse. She approached Lucas calmly. "You're safe, Lucas. You're in the hospital now," the nurse said warmly, checking the machines and wires. "Just take a deep breath. You're okay." Lucas met her eyes and followed her instructions, his breathing slowly becoming steadier. "Lucas, do you remember what happened?" the nurse asked gently. He paused, fear flickering across his face, then gave a small nod. My heart sank. He remembered. He must be terrified. "I'll give you some space," the nurse said kindly. "But just so you know, the police are here and want to speak with you. They won't come in unless you're ready." With that, she left the room. We all looked at Lucas. He didn't speak right away, just looked at us with a thoughtful frown. "So, you remember what happened?" I asked quietly. Lucas turned his head toward me and let out a small sigh before clearing his throat. "I remember everything up until you came around the corner. That's where it stops," he said, his voice hoarse. I looked down at our hands, his still holding mine. I gave his hand a gentle squeeze. "How are you feeling?" Mike asked, his voice filled with quiet concern. "Honestly, pretty awful." "I'm alive," Lucas replied with a tired smile. Mike nodded, eyes brimming with tears. "Don't cry," Lucas said softly, seeing the look on his father's face. "What do you mean, don't cry?" "I almost lost you," Mike said, his voice trembling. "But I'm here, Dad. I'm okay," Lucas replied with a small smile. Mike leaned in and hugged him gently, holding him for a moment. "I'm so glad you're all right," he whispered, wiping his eyes afterward. "All right, enough tears," Lucas said, forcing a playful tone. "Let's talk about something else, like how weird it must be for you two at work now." "Not too weird," Mike said with a shrug. "Although Alex didn't know I already knew about you two until I showed up." I chuckled awkwardly. It was strange, my boyfriend's dad being my boss, but I'd manage. "You can just call me Mike now," I said with a smile. "If you keep calling me, sir, it's only going to get more awkward." Mike laughed, but the light moment didn't last long. "Lucas." Amy's voice broke through, her tone sharp with worry. We all turned. Lucas' body was still, his eyes unfocused, staring at the ceiling. Then, without warning, his eyes rolled back and his head slumped to the side. My heart stopped. His hands stiffened in mine. His body began to tremble violently. The heart monitor beeped rapidly, sending panic through the room. I jumped back. Amy dashed out to get help. Lucas' body continued to seize as several doctors burst into the room with Amy close behind. One grabbed the oxygen mask while the others worked quickly, speaking in urgent tones. I stood frozen, unable to hear them over the sound of my own racing heart. All I could do was watch helplessly. After what felt like an eternity, but was probably just 20 seconds, Lucas began to settle. His body twitched a little, his breathing loud and fast through the mask. Then, finally, he became still again, his head falling gently to the side. I looked at Mike. He stood with his hands on his head, panic in his eyes. Most of the doctors left, leaving one behind to adjust some of the tubes and machines. I didn't understand what any of it meant. It was all a blur. Once the doctor finished, she spoke softly to us, then left the room. I turned back to Lucas, who now lay peacefully asleep, his breathing slow and steady through the oxygen mask. His body was still, his eyes closed. And for the first time since he opened his eyes, the room fell quiet again. Thanks for listening to today's BL story. If it made your heart skip a beat, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Only here on BL Stories, where love knows no limits.